This is the Schmo with the former boxing trainer, the podcaster, the analyst, the Hall of Famer, the living icon, Teddy Atlas in the flesh, inside your home, Staten Island, New York. How we doing?
Good. I'm glad we took the blindfold off you so you could, when you came in here, you wouldn't know exactly how to get back. But we will blindfold you again when you leave, and then we'll escort you out of here in a very loving manner. We don't allow too many people to come into the bunker here, but being that I got a request from the Schmo, I said, yeah, okay. It's good to see you, and everything's good. Got my grandchildren living here with us, and my daughter and son-in-law, along with me and my wife. We're blessed. We're very blessed. And then I know while you're in town, I'm going to be going over there too, to the Garden Saturday and covering for ESPN and the big show.
Well, the Schmo's blessed to be here. We're blessed to be inside the bunker. A lot of great sports memorabilia. ESPN made the right choice bringing you to the broadcast. UFC 281 in the Mecca, Madison Square Garden. Israel Adesanya, Alex Pereira. That's the headline fight. The champion. He's fighting Alex Pereira, a guy who's beaten him twice in a different sport, in kickboxing. What do you knocked him out once?
Those are hard to overcome. You got to clear the attic out. Seriously, you got to exercise. That's a big part of it. The mental part. 75% of this business is mental. So forget the physical part. We understand that he got caught a punch, he got hurt, and he got knocked out. But the mental part, really, you have to get rid of those ghosts. That's the most important part. As far as evaluating the fight, if you don't cover that part, you're not giving it a fair evaluation, or at least in my estimation. It's a big part of it. So, can Adesanya, exercise the ghost? Can he remove that? Yeah, it was some time ago, and yeah, it was in kickboxing. It was in this, in the UFC, but it still happened. And but I think that Adesanya can be like a golfer when he has to be. A golfer has to forget. You got to be able to forget the shot in the woods. You got to erase that, and you go right for the next one. Put it on the green. Put it in all. And Adesanya is the kind of guy. He's very cerebral. I think he can put that where it needs to be put, and I think he can use it to obviously correct whatever has to be. He's better warned now. Maybe he didn't quite understand the significance of the striking ability, the boxing ability, the punching ability of Pereira. And now he does. And now I think he'll use, as far as evaluating that fight, if I'm going to evaluate it for the people, I would say he's got to use his legs, keep more balance. A punch is not a punch if he can't deliver the punch. If you don't allow him to be set, to be able to deliver the TNT, to explode the bomb, if you will, then it doesn't matter that he's got power. So Adesanya has great legs. He reminds me of like a Roy Jones in boxing from years ago. He can move real well. So keep more balance. So I'm sure Adesanya will be better set and better prepared to probably use more of the ring or more of the cage and keep him a little bit off balance. Don't stand in front of him the way he did and get caught. That big left hook, he got caught. So I think that'll be part. And again, if he hadn't been down that road, he wouldn't be as aware of needing to do that, because sometimes your ego gets in the way. You say, no, I can stand with the guy. I'm a great striker. And he is. Adesanya's a great striker. But now I think ego could be removed from the equation, and he can just do what this tells him to do, which is to keep more balance, move, and maybe even do something a little surprising. Maybe. And look, I'm a boxing expert. I'm not a UFC expert, but I know fighting. And, we cover both on my podcast. And again, I'm not the level of the Joe Rogans and the DCs and, the Bizbangs. I mean, Bizbangs and, Aunt Anik and all those guys. They're tremendous, every one of them. And I always say, thank you for allowing me to even be on the set with you guys, because you guys are the real deal when it comes to this specific sport. But I wouldn't be shocked if Adesanya was to go to the floor, to the mat a little bit. And that's not his strength, but he's learned to escape there. He's learned to prevent, be very good at preventing takedowns and to survive there when he has to and stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if with such a great striker like Pereira, that he wouldn't do that to kill a little time, to throw him off a little bit, to mix it up a little bit, keep more balance, keep more stride a little bit. Obviously, most of the fight is going to be striking. We would figure that. Again, use his legs, keep more balance. Don't give him angles. Don't allow him to really get set where he can use that power. And the most important part is go in there with a clear head, with a clear slate. That, that's not going to obviously interfere with what you have to do because of the mental side of it. So it's a real interesting fight. Pereira, is confident. On the other side of it, he
was going to ask you on the flip side.
Yeah. On the flip side, he thinks, he's going to catch him again. And another thing I would do if I was Adesanya, I would use feints, keep more balance with feints, if he's looking to counter you, draw it out a little prematurely and then, even knock on the front door, come in the side door a little bit, so again, just take away his greatest strength. Take away his greatest strength. Now, if I'm on the other side of it, I got to take away his greatest strength. Maybe I got to go to the body, take some air out of the tires so he doesn't use his legs. Maybe kick to the legs more. So he doesn't use his legs to keep me off balance. I got to think that way. What is his strengths? What is he going to do to counter my strengths? So I would look for Pereira to do that. Maybe go to the body a little bit, set it up a little bit. Maybe use his kicks to the legs, take away some of the mobility of Adesanya, where he can get him where he wants, in front of him, standing with him, fighting with him. Maybe even does a little of this. Those guys do that, just to try to, again, get him to do what he wants him to do, get him to get outside of himself, to get angry if he could get him that way, or to get him agitated, or not that these pros go for too much of that at this level, but you try whatever you can try. That's a possibility. At the end of the day, I think Pereira should also use his jab. Stabilize some of the boxing ability, some of the striking ability, some of the movement on the outside. Use your jab, even if it's to the chest. Just instead of the head, just to stabilize him a little bit. And then, get a situation where hopefully you can time him, you can catch him standing still.
Well, let's talk about what people are dubbing the people's main event. Someone well, Dustin the Diamond Poirier, he's returning to the octagon against Iron Michael Chandler. Both these guys, it's fireworks when they enter the octagon. Many see this as a title eliminator type fight. Who do you see as the person getting their hand raised and why?
Well, before I go down there, this Schmo wants to go bang. He wants to go right to the nitty gritty. I get it. I've been there. But for me, what makes a great fight is you can make an argument for either guy to win the fight. It's a toss-up that way. And you said it right. Two explosive guys. So the most important thing is you're going to get a good fight. You're going to get an explosion. I don't think you're going to be doing any of that. Yeah, I mean, you're gonna have stuff going on. And we all know Chandler comes out of the box fast, and then people think he burns out. I don't think he's going to burn out anymore. I'll tell you why. I think he's fought nothing but monsters since he came over to you. You got to give him credit. And the same credit to Poirier. Poirier, the reason you got to love Poirier and the reason he's so good is because he earned his way. I mean, he fought everybody to get to where he got to the title. And a lot of guys don't have to do that. They get a good golden path, like in boxing. Sometimes these Olympic guys, they sign up with a network, with a promoter, and they get a put it this way, they get a soft diet of opponents to get to a certain point, and then they might not be ready when the time comes because they had a soft diet. These guys are already in the UFC. Well, that's one thing about the MMA and about the UFC is there's no free lunches. There's no slam dunks and layups for these guys. They got to earn their way. They got to earn their keep. And that's why the brand is so big. and grown so much it keeps growing because they put competitive fights on week in and week in, week in and week out. So again, this one's at the top echelon of talent. And so you got a guy with Poirier who's a veteran guy who's fought everybody. And then you got Chandler who's come along. And what's he been here 2 years now in the UFC? And since he came, like I said, his first fight was Godzilla. His second fight was King Kong. His third fight was the Wolfman. I mean, he's fought everybody. And yeah, very explosive, very dangerous. And yeah, if he didn't get you, he gotten to a certain extent. And with some of these top guys like Oliveira, guys like that. But, which is no shame. These are top guys. But I think he's matured a little bit. I really do. I think going through that experience and having been, that distance a little bit more now and, the maturity that comes with that and obviously the learning and understanding that comes with it and adjustments, I think he's more prepared now to be more consistent and maybe a little bit, I'm not saying slow out of the gate, but more contained out of the gate and more leveled throughout the fight in a more consistent, leveled manner, which would serve him. I think that it's going to be a very tough fight for both guys, very dangerous fight. Poirier, I think, is one of the best finishers. He's a great puncher, great striker. He's great on the floor, too. They all know what they're doing, both of them on the floor, on the mat. But Poirier is, he's tremendous there. He came this close to getting rid of Khabib.
Those deep guillotine choke.
Yeah, he really good at it. But you know your stuff, kid. He, like I said, when he gets a guy hurt, he usually gets rid of him. And so someone's going to hurt somebody. I mean, for two reasons, the styles, not just the power that they both have and the explosive abilities they both have, but just the styles. They don't take all day to introduce themselves. They're there. So somebody's going to get caught. Who gets caught and, does he survive at that moment right there? Again, I'm not going to give you I don't hide anything. If you're going to ask me a question, I'm going to tell you the truth, or I'm going to keep my mouth shut. I'm a friend of Poirier. So he's been on my podcast a lot. He's a good person. He runs a charity foundation, as I do. He's a good human being. I know Chandler is too, but I don't know him the way I know Poirier. I don't have that personal relationship. So I'm rooting for him. I mean, it doesn't affect me doing this, doesn't affect me doing my podcast.
Well, you might get less hot sauce if you pick against him in the Christmas gift,
Too. He got good hot sauce down in Louisiana, baby. The Poirier hot sauce. You're right. No, you're right. But I'm trying to keep that out of the equation, okay, Schmo? I'm trying to not let that kind of influence me. I hope to be better than hot sauce. I'm trying, influenced by hot sauce. But I'll be rooting for him. But again, my evaluation, my breakdown, my analytics for the fight isn't in any way compromised or influenced by my relationship with Dustin. Tough fight, dangerous fight for him, dangerous fight for Chandler, toss-up type of fight. Who hurts who first? Maybe that's the end of it. Maybe possibly. Maybe that's the end of it. Exciting, like I said. There's a reason why people are dubbing that as people's fight of the night, because of what we just said.
About a year ago, it was here, Madison Square Garden, when Chandler fought Gaethje, and arguably that was the fight of the year. So if we can get a fraction of that, we're in for a fun night.
And I was there covering that fight for ESPN. That was, the whole card was unbelievable. But yeah, and then you had the great Usman, though I think he might have been the. He's lost his title since, but I think he might have been the main event that night. But
against Colby Covington, beating him a second time.
Yeah, that's right. You're right. Your memory is damn good. Very good.
Well, the Schmo loves the sport, but speaking of top five, we talked about DC. You brought up his name. He listed his top five fighters of all time on Stephen A's show the other day. I believe he put it number 5. Amanda Nunes. Number 4, George St. Pierre. Number 3, Muhammad Ali. Number 2, Khabib Nurmagomedov. And number 1, Floyd Money Mayweather. Do you agree with that top 5, especially the boxing side?
Everything's subjective. I agree that that's his favorite. That's his. That's what I agree with. That's what he sees. That's what he likes. Everyone has different tastes for the styles of the fighter, the ability of the fighter, the approach of the fighter. I agree. That's his. It's not mine, but yeah, I agree that that's what he likes.
What's yours?
Listen, if I had to do it real quick, mine. I love Mayweather, one of the great defensive fighters of, contemporary times, more contemporary times. But I go back where Pernell Whitaker was a damn good defensive fighter. So, I think a little maybe deeper in the sport in that kind of way. But you can't go wrong with his picks. I go to Henry Armstrong as a boxer because this guy had almost 300 fights back in the 30s when boxing was bigger than any other sport in the country, bigger than baseball. And he had like 110 knockouts. I mean, the guy was a monster. I mean, and he had the best fight name, the best nickname, Homicide Hank. You got a phone call, you find Homicide, you might get like a click. And meanwhile, those guys didn't hang up on anybody. Who am I fighting? What? Yeah, okay, where? When? How much? But when they heard Homicide Hank, it could be a little disturbing. Look, this is a guy who won the lightweight title, no middle titles, none of these in-between titles, and there wasn't 152 champions. There was, 11? What world champions? One for each division. So he goes and wins. This is Henry Armstrong, Homicide Hank. He goes and wins the featherweight title, the lightweight title, full titles, no in-betweens, and then the welterweight title. And simultaneously goes and defends all of them. And then decides to go up to middleweight, fight Severino Garcia for the middleweight title. And 15-round draw. But he really won. There was a reason. It was funny stuff going on. But he really won that fight. So he should have had 4 full titles. But he had 3 full titles and, as I said, defend them all simultaneously. So that guy's a monster. And look, all the people I can't argue with them. That's his favorite. But Henry would have been on there for me. Guy like Sam Langford, who had 300 fights, who fought from lightweight to heavyweight. But back in the 20s, 30s, most people don't know about these guys. They don't. But Sam Langford probably would have been on there. And as far as for me, DC knows better than me. He put me to shame with understanding the UFC guys. But I probably would have had, for me, Anderson Silva is the best that I ever had the privilege of watching when he was still at his prime as a striker for the UFC, or as a champion for the UFC. But he was the best I've seen. I mean, and then John Jones is pretty damn good. I know he's still there and he has.
DC's not going to put him in his top 5 anytime.
Oh, that's true. They have a little history there, but. I'm saying those, and listen, Pierre, you can't go wrong with. I mean, come on, he's one. I think anybody you would talk about your top UFC or MMA fighters of all time. I think he'd be on the list of the top 3 or 4 with anyone. I also think Anderson Silva would. I also think John Jones would have a shot at being on there. And then you can't forget Khabib. Isn't it weird? Really, you would really be a good one to ask this. For me, let me have this thing. Now, isn't it kind of strange that Khabib, guy who retired undefeated, guy who's just like incredible, and he's turned out to be an incredible trainer. He's put monsters out there, one after another, right? Isn't it that we don't kind of like hear about him when they talk about the greatest conversation? How come? Why?
It's because a lot of experts think he just retired too soon. I mean, we could assume he'd just defend that lightweight strap multiple times over and over again, and his protege, his teammate, Islam Makhachev, is now carrying the torch. Yeah. But it's kind of like if you compare it to the NFL and the greatest running backs of all time. We're talking about this over at your kitchen table. He's kind of like the Barry Sanders to MMA, to the UFC. A lot of people consider Barry Sanders the greatest running back of all time. I do. Maybe from a pure skill standpoint, but he retired too soon.
Don't forget about Jim Brown. Go ahead.
But you can't forget about Jim Brown, Walter Payton, Emmett Smith.
Yeah.
I mean, just to name a few.
Emmett Smith is the top as far as yardage that they have. But But Brown, you got to remember, he's got fewer carries than anybody. He retired very, early. He didn't have to make, and they only had 14 games a season back then. The guy, again, like Henry Armstrong, back in a different era.
Right.
Different era.
Right. But like, for example, LeBron James in the NBA just surpassed Michael Jordan all time for points, but it took him 150 more games, hundreds of more 3-point shots, free throws.
That should matter.
Yeah, longevity.
I agree. That should matter.
It does matter, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, here, take this.
Okay.
Yeah, let's go back.
No, I like that. But, okay, I like that. I like how you put the Schmo on the spot. We still got some questions to ask you and put you on the spot. So when we talk about the best boxers in the UFC, some of the guys with the best hands, when you look at the game film, who's at the short list for Teddy Atlas?
Well, I mean, Adesanya is pretty damn good at moving around, striking. Especially a little earlier in his career. He hasn't been around a real long time, but a little earlier. He's some people might say he's more defensive minded. He's been a little defensive minded lately, but he's great. I thought Max Holloway was tremendous. I know he got taken apart with Volkanovski, who's also tremendous. He's a beast. He really is. But before that fight, Max was really, for me, really good striker. He could do it all. He could fight on the outside, he fight on the inside, use his legs, move a little bit. I think Aldo, what I've seen of Aldo, I know he's getting a little long in the tooth now, but I go back a little bit with him. Pretty damn good. Like I said, Volkanovski knows what the hell he's doing. He just took apart Max Holloway, which isn't an easy task to do. I think John Jones. I mean, he's a damn good striker, and he's along the lines of if I would like he kind of plays to his own music. He goes to a beat of a different drummer, where a lot of the special ones do, kind of like a Bruce Lee in a way where it's like he makes it up as he does it. That takes special talent. Roy Jones, I used his name earlier. Roy Jones used to do stuff like that. And hey, Muhammad Ali, DC used his name. Muhammad Ali was the kind of guy like he would just create new stuff. There's certain guys that can kind of make it up as they do it, and again, will go to the beat of their own drummer. I think that's a fair list. What I gave you.
Certainly is. A lot of great fights to be made in the sport of boxing. 2023. If the Schmo were to name a couple of fights, what would be number one for you that you would want to see of all these fights first? Let's give you the list. Let's go Lomachenko, Devin Haney. Let's go Usyk, Tyson Fury. Let's go Gervonta Tank Davis against Ryan Garcia, and Terrence Bud Crawford against Errol Spence Jr.
Good list. You put the right list together. You did. You're more than just a guy with these glasses and a jacket. You're really good and knowledgeable about what you do, and that helps. I'd start with the heavyweights because it's the heavyweights. There used to be a belief, and there still is, where as the heavyweights go, the sport goes. They're the head of the snake. So that would be important. Fury, everyone knows him. He's kind of like Conor McGregor was in the UFC, where he's a great promoter. He gets everybody going, noticing things because of the way he behaves, the way he acts, and the way he wins. He's and he's the linear champion right now. So. And putting together the one belt for the heavyweight is always important. Always important. The baddest man on the planet, if you will, the way Tyson had coined the phrase years ago when he was Tyson. So I that's important. I'd like to see that one, and it would be awfully interesting. Could the good little man beat the good big man? That really would be. It goes back. It goes back eras, back generations. It goes back, through the annals of the sport. Can the little guy beat the big guy? So that would be really, and it is about this. It is about the sweet science. So what better way to prove the sweet science than a little guy having to beat a guy that's, so much bigger, literally. I mean, like, taller, heavier, everything.
The undefeated lineal heavyweight champion of the world, too.
Yeah, exactly. So That would be awfully good. Another one would be the one that everyone's disappointed already because it's not happening with Spencer Crawford, and that harkens me back. See, that brings my memory back to when I thought boxing was at its healthiest point since the 30s and the 40s, quite frankly, where in the 80s, where. First of all, you had network TV, so you had free TV, so you got to know the guys, on ABC, Wild World of Sport, NBC, whatever. On a Saturday or Sunday, you could watch it with your family. They win in your living room. That was number one. You don't have that no more. But here's the thing. You had great, talented fighters that don't come along too often. We have some really great, talented fighters today. People forget that. You had really great ones in the 80s. Here's the big difference between the 80s and now. They fought each other. Duran fought Leonard fought Hearns, Hagler, they all, Pernell Whitaker, all these great fighters, Aaron Pryor. You had all these great, but they were all fighting each other. They were fighting the top guys. They don't do that no more. That's the problem. And so that's why, and it's still not happening because they were different promoters. They won't go across the street and be allowed to fight the fight that we want, that you want to talk about, that the fans want. Back in the 80s, you had that. And that was the difference. And that's why the sport was so damn healthy. So that Spence and Crawford fight, that would bring you back to that. It would remind you of when Hearns and Leonard fought, when Duran and, Duran and Leonard fought with those kind of mega fights. So for me, I'd love, and look, you mentioned all of the right ones. I'd love to see Tank Davis. I mean, not only can he punch, he can fight. He can do everything. He's so dimensional. The guy, people don't realize that. He can counterpunch, he can box, and he can punch like hell. So I'd love to see. I'd rather see him with Lomachenko. I'll be honest with you. I mix up I'll mix it up a little bit because Lomachenko's a science guy. He's getting a little older now. He's a science guy. He makes you miss. He tries to break it down, take your will away. Could the technique of him beat the power? Because you can't make a mistake with Tank Davis, so it would be, a little bit of the power and against the technique, against the sweet science, who comes out on top. All those fights would be interesting, but for the reasons I just said it, the ones that I just mentioned would come to the top of my mind.
It seems like those O's get in the way of it. You don't see that happening with the UFC fighters, but a lot of the guys the Schmo mentioned, they got an O. They got the W, but in the L column, there's a 0. It means way too much for these guys.
Yeah, no, 100%, because, see, you only got about 5 power brokers in boxing, so they just care about their property. They don't care about the sport. See, the difference in the UFC is that you got one guy, runs everything. A lot of people talk about both sides, they get mad, they say that. But look, sometimes it's good to have a dictator. Yeah, Dana White's a dictator. He runs the whole thing. It's his way or the highway. As long as you're not lobbing heads off, a dictator, it could work sometimes. Because why? The product is the way he wants it to be. It's good. It's good for the sport, for the health of the sport, because he insists that top guys fight top guys, that there's no layups. And I'll tell you one other thing that happens. The guys developed. They become the best fighters they can, like in the 30s. There's a reason why the 30s had so many great fighters. They had losses, but the thing was they fought each other, and they learned, and they developed. And even if they had 5 losses, 6 losses, 7 losses, whatever, it didn't matter. Because when they got there, they could win. They could beat anyone. Because they went through the fire. They got forged through the fire. They became the top fighter by fighting the guys they had to fight. Now, the manager keeps guys away, and the promoters keep their guys that are signed up with them, with their network. They keep them away from the fights that could make them better, and that we would enjoy. They keep them away because they want to stay undefeated, so they still get taken care of by the network. The network wants those undefeated glossy records that they can promote. So here's guys that should have a fight where there's a risk you could lose. They won't do that. And it'll make them a better fighter. That's the funny thing. At the end, back in the 30s, the 40s, so they wanted to find out how good they could be. They want, and even one of my favorite fighters of the more contemporary times was Sugar Ray Leonard. Great fighter. He could fit in any era. And he fought Duran, he wanted to know, how far can I go? How good can I be? Well, and there's only one way to know. And And when you get forced, I talk about on my podcast all the time, where you get forced to open another door in your house, and you get forced to open a door you never opened before. You find out about a place that you never knew existed, that you could go to, that you never knew was there. The only way that you go there is to be forced to open that door. And that means fight top guys. And the networks and the promoters with the network, they won't let that happen.
Is there a current guy in boxing today that could be that dictator, that could kind of lead the charge? Does that guy exist right now?
It's not set up that way. We need a national commission. So, there's a reason why the NFL, NBA, MLB, even golf. I mean, there's somebody who's in charge. There's a commission that says, no, this is the rules, and they're unified, and you have to abide by these standards, by these rules, and stay within, these parameters. Boxing, there's nothing. You got separate state commissions, all have their different rules. And quite frankly, half of them, there's too much corruption in the sport, quite frankly. I mean, half of them are controlled by the promoters, because without the promoters, they don't work. They don't get a check. So the promoter tells them, hey, you do it this way. They're going to do it that way. That's why you need a national. I used to fight for it years ago when I was on ESPN, fought the fight. We got close. I had John McCain, Senator McCain at the time, where we were going to get a national commission together. We were doing it privately with a group of people that we had our group together, our committee together, and we were trying to get to thought we were getting to the point where we were going to have a national czar, a national commission. And but it never quite got done. It ran into a few walls along the way. And then McCain had something came up. It was called running for the presidency of the United States. And he went that way, and that was kind of the end of it. But it's never going to happen in boxing unless what I just described, a national commission, was to be put into place. Never going to happen, because these promoters aren't going to give up the good deals they have, where they control their little power, and they control their piece of property. They have their network deals. They're making all kinds of money, millions of dollars. They don't care about the overall wealth of the sport, if you will, or health of the sport. They just know they're making theirs. And it does deprive us and the sport of growing the way that the UFC has grown. I mean, that's the key. It's grown. What was it? A few years ago, I remember I heard, I remember it was where it was sold for $2 billion. Recently, someone said that it's now valued at $9 billion. I mean, that's growth. Obviously, that's growth. I mean, there's NFL teams aren't worth that. So, and there's a reason for it, because of what we just talked about. So, at the end of the day, boxing's been around longer than any other sport. It'll hang around. It'll stay around because of the nature of it. Because people want to see two people get in that ring and find out who can find a way that they had never found before, be in a situation, be hurt, whatever, and find a way to be better than they ever been before. Because when we watch that, it gives us hope that maybe we can find a way. That's why we watch it.
That is fantastic. Can we get a final message for all the Teddy Atlas fans out there worldwide?
Just say, I'm blessed to have you guys in my life, because I know whether it's with the podcast or whether it's with the videos that I do with dynamic striking, the teaching videos, or whether it's with the book that we put out with the audio book, or even with, I was blessed to have a clothing line with Box Raw, a great company run by a former fighter in London. And then they put out a Teddy Atlas 36 line where it's 36 minutes to make life fair. That was my saying. So we put that line. All of yous have just been there. Whether it's supporting any one of the things I just said, in the kind of way that you have. It's never taken for granted. It's really appreciated. And even when I see people, I go out and I see somebody and they say something like, Ted, thanks for fighting the fight with boxing over the years at ESPN, trying to get the commission or going after the judges when they gave a bad decision and chasing after them, telling them that, this isn't acceptable. You would always come up to me, and even when I was down sometimes, and I got in trouble a little bit for doing it at ESPN, at the end of the day, was it worthwhile? Yeah, you got to know inside you it's worthwhile. But you guys always somehow let me know, yeah, it meant something. How you behave means something. What you do in those kind of ways means something. So I just want you to know I love you guys for that. And I appreciate it. Like I said, it's never assumed or taken for granted. And I appreciate people like you. I appreciate people that have a passion for what they do and promote the sport. Promote the sport, whether it's UFC, whether it's MMA, whether it's boxing, that we need more people that promote it in the right way, that bring out things that sometimes are missed, that sometimes people don't recognize or see as much as they see sometimes the bad stuff. Like, everybody knows of like one of the fighters, I won't mention names, but says something that could be a little stupid. Everyone's like, yeah, but what about all the ones that say something that ain't stupid, that they're saying the right things and doing the right things quietly, and they're for people in the proper way and behaving and, given the right presentation of themselves outside whether it's outside the cage or outside the ring. And I appreciate people that, again, bring a light to those dimensions too. So thank you.
We appreciate you. You're the living legend, the pro, Teddy Atlas. I'm the Schmo, Staten Island.
He's very talented. It's amazing.
We're out.